The burned-out Honda Civic sat at the bottom of a ravine 3 miles outside Millbrook, Colorado, like a metal carcass picked clean by scavengers. The morning sun cast long shadows through the pine trees, and the smell of charred plastic and melted rubber hung in the thin mountain air. Sheriff's Deputy Tom Martinez stood at the edge of the access road, looking down at what remained of someone's final journey. "Accident, most likely," said Sheriff Kowalski, a heavy-set man who'd been elected more for his ability to keep the peace at town meetings than for his detective skills. "Probably fell asleep at the wheel, went off the road, hit something that sparked a fire. Before we continue, comment below which city you're from." Zach Morrison, 23 years old and 6 months into his job with the National Forest Service, crouched beside the wreckage with the uncomfortable feeling that something wasn't right. The car had burned hot and fast, but the damage pattern looked wrong for an accident. Too complete, too thorough, as if someone had wanted to make sure nothing survived. In the trunk, sealed in a waterproof bag that had somehow escaped the flames, they found a military rucksack containing camping gear, a medical kit, and a dog tag engraved with Finnegan, Marie E. Major, U.S. Army Medical Corps. Marie Finnegan, Sheriff Kowalski read from his notebook. 41 years old, address in Denver. Veteran, looks like. Zach had never met Marie Finnegan, but he knew the name from the guest registry at the Pineview campground. She'd reserved a group site for 4 people, paid for 3 nights in advance, and left detailed instructions about privacy and no contact service. The kind of booking that usually meant family reunions or corporate retreats where people wanted to be left alone. "Sheriff, I think we should check the campground," Zach said. "Why's that?" She had a reservation. If this was an accident leaving the area, why was she driving away from town instead of toward it? Sheriff Kowalski looked annoyed at having his accident theory complicated by logic, but he nodded. "Go check it out. But don't touch anything. This isn't a crime scene unless I say it is." The campsite at Pineview was empty except for a single tent, a circle of stones around a cold fire pit, and the kind of silence that feels heavy with unfinished business. Zach walked the perimeter carefully, noting details that might matter later. 4 sleeping bags laid out in the tent, a medical kit opened but unused, camping chairs arranged in a perfect circle as if for a meeting that never happened. No signs of struggle, no blood, no torn fabric, no scattered belongings that would suggest violence or panic. Just the deliberate arrangement of someone who'd planned a gathering and wanted everything to be exactly right. In the tent, wrapped in a plastic bag and tucked under one of the sleeping bags, Zach found a spiral notebook filled with Marie's handwriting. Most of it was illegible in the dim light, but one page near the back was marked with a red pen. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't finish what I started. Look for them in Millbrook." 3 names: David Chen, mechanic at Patterson's Garage; Miguel Santos, drives for Mountain Transit; Tommy Walsh, unemployed, lives behind the VFW Hall. They were with me in Fallujah, 2012. They know what happened. Below that, in different ink, was a single line: "Some wounds don't heal. They just get infected." Zach photographed the page with his phone and put the notebook back where he'd found it. Protocol said he should call the sheriff immediately, but something made him hesitate. The arrangement of the campsite, the careful preparation, the note that felt more like a confession than a cry for help. None of it suggested a random crime or accident. This felt like an ending someone had chosen. Don't miss the ending. Watch the story till the end. You'll never expect what the main character does. Patterson's Garage sat on the edge of Millbrook's tiny downtown, a two-bay operation that specialized in keeping old pickup trucks and tourist SUVs running through another Colorado winter. David Chen was under the hood of a Ford F-150 when Zach walked in, his hands black with grease and his concentration absolute. "Mr. Chen, I'm Zach Morrison, Forest Service. I wanted to ask you about Marie Finnegan." David's wrench slipped, and he cursed softly in what sounded like Mandarin. When he straightened up, his face was carefully neutral, but his hands were shaking. "Don't know anyone by that name." "She had your name written down in her notebook, said you served together in Iraq." "A lot of people served in Iraq. Doesn't mean I know them all." Zach showed him the photo of the notebook page on his phone. David looked at it for maybe 3 seconds, then turned back to the truck engine. "That's not my handwriting. Could be anyone named David Chen." "Mr. Chen, she's missing. Her car was found burned out on Forest Road 247. If you know anything that might help." "I said I don't know her." David's voice was louder now, with an edge that suggested the conversation was over. "You want to talk to me about missing persons? Bring a badge and a warrant." Zach left his card on the workbench and walked out, but not before noticing that David Chen's hands were still shaking, and he hadn't touched his tools since Marie Finnegan's name was mentioned. Miguel Santos was easier to find, but harder to read. He drove the 3:15 p.m. shuttle between Millbrook and the regional airport in Grand Junction. A 90-minute round trip through mountain roads that left plenty of time for conversation if passengers were inclined to talk. Zach caught him during his break at the transit depot, sitting alone in the driver's lounge with a cup of coffee and a 1,000-yard stare that Zach recognized from his own father, who'd done 3 tours in Afghanistan and never talked about any of them. "Miguel Santos?" "Depends who's asking." Zach introduced himself and explained about Marie Finnegan. Miguel listened without expression, occasionally sipping his coffee, giving nothing away. "You served with her in Iraq?" "Maybe." "She's missing. Her car was found burned. Any idea why she might have come to Millbrook?" Miguel was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the mountains. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and tired. "Some people, they carry things that get heavier over time, like a backpack that keeps filling up with rocks and you can't take it off, and eventually it just breaks you." "Did Marie carry things like that?" "We all did. But some of us learned to put the pack down. Others..." He shrugged. "Others just kept walking until they couldn't anymore." "Miguel, if you know something about what happened to her..." "I know she was the best field medic I ever saw. I know she saved my life twice, maybe 3 times. I know she didn't sleep right for months after Fallujah. And when we all came home, she was the only one who tried to keep us together." He finished his coffee and stood up. "I also know that some stories don't have good endings, no matter how much you want them to." Zach found Tommy Walsh hanging himself in the VFW hall basement on Thursday morning. He'd gone there looking for the 3rd name on Marie's list, asking around town until someone mentioned that Tommy sometimes did odd jobs for the Veterans Organization and slept in their storage room when the weather was bad. The janitor who found the body was a Vietnam veteran named Pete Rodriguez, 72 years old and steady as a rock until he opened the basement door and started screaming. Tommy had used a climbing rope tied to a water pipe, professional and efficient. On the concrete floor beneath his feet, someone had carved words into the surface with what looked like a knife or screwdriver. "Deserve this." Sheriff Kowalski was treating it as a suicide, which it obviously was. But Zach couldn't shake the feeling that Tommy Walsh had been answering a question that nobody else understood. In Tommy's wallet, they found a business card for a psychiatrist in Denver, 3 pictures of children who might have been his family, and a folded piece of paper with an address and a date. Pineview Campground, Site 7, September 15th to 17th. The same dates Marie Finnegan had reserved. The truth will be revealed only at the end. Ready? Then don't forget to share your thoughts below the video. She planned it, David Chen said when Zach confronted him the second time. The whole thing, camping trip just like old times. Said she wanted to talk about Fallujah, about what happened there, about the report she filed afterward. They were sitting in David's truck behind the garage, away from customers and co-workers who might overhear. David's hands were steadier now, but his eyes looked hollow. What report? The one where she lied for us. Said we were treating wounded civilians when, really... He stopped and lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. Really, we were cleaning up our own mess. What kind of mess? David was quiet for a long time, smoking and staring at the mountains. There was a house in Fallujah. Intelligence said it was a bomb factory, maybe weapons cache. We were supposed to secure it, search it, call in the EOD team if we found anything. Another long pause. But when we kicked in the door, it wasn't a bomb factory. It was a family. Kids, grandparents, people just trying to survive another day in hell. Zach waited. Firefights started when the father tried to protect his family. We thought he was reaching for a weapon, but he was just scared. And when the shooting stopped, there were 6 people dead, including 2 kids who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. David flicked his cigarette into the parking lot. Marie was our medic. She arrived after it was over, tried to save the ones who were still breathing. But they were too far gone, and we all knew it. She could have written up the truth, that we'd acted on bad intelligence and killed innocent people. Instead, she said they were combatants who'd fired first, and we were treating their wounded when they died. Why would she lie? Because she knew what the truth would do to us. Court-martial, prison, maybe worse. She took one look at us standing there, covered in blood, and decided that losing 4 soldiers wouldn't bring those civilians back. Zach thought about Marie's notebook, about the campsite arranged for 4 people, about Tommy Walsh's last words carved into concrete. So she invited you all to the campground to... What? Confess? To decide, David said. She said we'd carried the lie long enough, and it was time to choose. Live with it forever, or tell the truth and face whatever came next. And Tommy chose. Tommy couldn't live with either option, so he chose the third one. David started his truck and put it in gear. She's not missing Forest Service. She's not coming back, and maybe that's for the best. Zach found Miguel Santos at the transit depot that evening, cleaning his bus and preparing for the last run of the day. Miguel looked up when Zach approached, but didn't stop working. You talked to David. He told me about Fallujah, about the family you killed. Miguel nodded slowly. 6 people. The Khalil family. I remember all their names. He said Marie lied in her report to protect you. She did, and it's been eating at her for 12 years, eating at all of us. Miguel finished wiping down the bus windows and turned to face Zach directly. You want to know what happened at that campground? Marie set up a tribunal, said it was time for all of us to decide. Keep living the lie or tell the truth and take the consequences. And you decided? We decided nothing. That was the problem. Marie laid it all out. The truth about Fallujah, the choice we had to make, the fact that we couldn't keep running from what we'd done. Miguel sat down heavily on the bus steps. Tommy was the first to crack. Started talking about how he saw those kids every night, how he couldn't sleep, couldn't work, couldn't look at his own children without thinking about the ones we'd killed. Said he didn't deserve to live when they were dead. So he killed himself. He killed himself. And then David panicked, said if Tommy was dead, the whole story would come out anyway. Started talking about how maybe we should all just disappear, make it look like an accident, start over somewhere else. Zach felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. And Marie? Marie just listened. Didn't argue, didn't try to talk us out of anything. Just sat there by the fire with that medical bag of hers, like she was waiting for us to finish bleeding out so she could pronounce us dead. Miguel stood up and looked toward the mountains where the sun was setting behind the peaks. When we woke up the next morning, Tommy was hanging from a tree and Marie was gone. David and I burned her car. Figured it would buy us some time to think. But there's nothing to think about anymore. Where is she? I don't know. Maybe she drove away and started over somewhere else. Maybe she walked into the woods and decided she was done carrying our secrets. Miguel climbed into his bus and started the engine. Either way, she's not coming back. And maybe that's the only honest thing any of us have done since Fallujah. Zach returned to the campground one more time, as the investigation was officially closed and the case filed away as an accidental death with unrecovered remains. The tent was gone, taken as evidence that would never be examined. The fire pit had been scattered by wind and rain. But in the trees around the clearing, Zach found what he was looking for. A small cairn of rocks, carefully stacked, the kind of memorial that soldiers sometimes built for fallen comrades in places where proper burials weren't possible. Tucked under the bottom stone was a piece of paper, protected by a plastic bag. Marie Finnegan's handwriting, neat and precise as a medical chart. The Khalil family, Rashid, 34, Fatima, 28, Omar, 12, Layla, 8, Hussein, 67, Amina, 61. They died September 7th, 2012, Fallujah, Iraq. I failed them. I failed my soldiers. I failed myself. Some wounds don't heal. They just teach you to live with the pain. Below that, in different handwriting, she chose for all of us. D. Zach folded the paper and put it in his pocket. He would never turn it in as evidence, never add it to a file that nobody would read. Some truths were meant to be carried by the living, not processed by bureaucrats who'd never heard a shot fired in anger or held a dying child in their arms. Major Marie Finnegan had disappeared into the Colorado wilderness, carrying 12 years of guilt and the choice her soldiers couldn't make for themselves. Whether she'd walked into the mountains to die or driven away to start over, Zach would never know, but he understood why she'd had to go. Some battles couldn't be won, only survived. And sometimes surviving meant learning when to stop fighting and just let go. The campground was empty now, ready for the next group of visitors who would come seeking peace in the mountains, unaware that someone had found her own kind of peace there, in a place where the only witnesses were trees and stones and the wind that carried secrets into the vast indifference of the sky. Zach drove back to town with Marie's note in his pocket and the weight of another person's war settling on his shoulders, understanding finally why his father never talked about Afghanistan and why some stories were better left untold. In Millbrook, David Chen closed his garage and Miguel Santos parked his bus for the last time. Both men would disappear within the week, leaving behind jobs and lives and identities that no longer fit the weight they carried. The burned Honda Civic was towed to a junkyard and crushed into a cube of metal that would eventually become part of something else, something useful, something that had no memory of the choices that had led to its destruction. And in the mountains above Millbrook, The wind continued to blow through the trees, carrying whispers of stories that would never be written in official reports, truths too complex for headlines, and the names of 6 people who had died on a street in Fallujah and would never be forgotten by the woman who had tried to save them all.